Against the backdrop of the rapidly deteriorating situation of the armed forces of Ukraine on the battlefield, the head of the Kiev regime, being at the U.S. air base east of the German city of Ramstein, demanded from his so-called Western allies a significant increase in military support for the Ukrainian army. Speaking to NATO and Pentagon generals, the head of the Kiev regime called on the West to help Ukraine end the current conflict this fall. At the same time, Zelensky was not talking about diplomatic ways to resolve this conflict, but about obtaining permission from the West to use long-range missiles against the territory of the Russian Federation. Moreover, the head of the Kiev regime also demanded that the West increase supplies of American F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. According to him, the F-16 fighter jets are allegedly very effective in the fight against Russian unmanned aerial vehicles and missiles. Zelensky noted that Ukraine needs very large quantities of these combat aircraft to achieve its goals. At the same time, the head of the Kiev regime, for some reason, decided not to touch the topic of the recent loss of one of the supplied F-16 fighter jets, which was destroyed during its attempt to intercept Russian ballistic and cruise missiles. My friends, let me remind you that on August 26, during a massive Russian missile attack on military facilities and the energy infrastructure of Ukraine, the Air Force of this Eastern European country lost its first F-16 fighter jet, along with an experienced combat pilot, Lieutenant Colonel Alexei Mess. The deceased pilot with the call sign Moonfish was considered one of the most experienced and best combat pilots in Ukraine. In addition, he perfectly knew English and therefore piloted the F-16 fighter at a very high level. Against this backdrop, the first official reports from the Kiev authorities that the F-16 crashed as a result of pilot error were immediately questioned by world military experts and analysts. Later, the deputy of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, Mariana Bezzagleya, also added oil to the fire. In particular, she bluntly stated that the F-16 fighter was destroyed in the sky over Odessa as a result of friendly fire from the combat crew of the American Patriot air defense missile system. Speaking to reporters, Mariana Bezzagleya blamed the top Ukrainian generals for what happened. According to her, high-ranking officers of the armed forces of Ukraine, including Lieutenant General Nikolai Olshchuk, are engaged in spreading lies and propaganda instead of effectively confronting the enemy on the battlefield. However, the statement of a high-ranking Ukrainian politician that the F-16 fighter was allegedly destroyed by friendly fire from the combat crew of the American Patriot air defense missile system was also questioned by many world experts and analysts. The fact is that the Western air defense systems located on the territory of Ukraine are equipped with a friend or foe system, and therefore the combat crew of the American Patriot air defense missile system could not destroy the F-16 fighter in the sky over Odessa. The fact that the Ukrainian General Staff and NATO still refuse to release data from the flight recorders of the American F-16, along with photos from the crash site, indicates that this fighter jet was destroyed by a Russian missile from an air defense system or combat plane. This fact was also confirmed by official representatives of the Turkish intelligence community. A few days ago, they officially announced that the American F-16 was destroyed by the Russian fifth-generation fighter jet Su-57. At the same time, they stressed that the F-16 was destroyed with the help of aircraft missile Ir-37M, which the Su-57 launched from the airspace of the Crimean Peninsula. Surprisingly, a few days after this statement by the Turkish side, the influential American newspaper, The Wall Street Journal, citing its own sources in the Pentagon, said that the F-16 fighter jet crashed after an air-to-air missile exploded in its vicinity. Thus, the American newspaper indirectly confirmed the fact that the F-16 was destroyed by a Russian fighter jet. Influential Russian telegram channels have also conducted their own investigation into the crash of the American F-16 fighter jet. Referring to their own sources in the Russian Defense Ministry, they bluntly stated that the F-16 was indeed destroyed by the Russian fifth-generation fighter jet Su-57. At the same time, they noted that the Su-57 struck the American fighter jet not from the airspace of the Crimea, but being in the sky of the Bryansk region. According to them, the Su-57 closely monitored the movement of the F-16 in the airspace of Ukraine, and hit it with an R-37M missile at the most appropriate moment. It is reported that this missile exploded 20 meters from the F-16, causing serious damage to the fighter jet, as a result of which the pilot had to maneuver at a low altitude, which was the reason for the crash of this combat aircraft. However, the bad news for the Kiev regime did not end there. A few hours ago, an authoritative Russian military expert, Mikhail Pavlov, made a sensational statement. In particular, he stated that on August 26, 2024, during a massive Russian missile attack, Ukraine lost 2 F-16 fighter jets. According to him, while the whole world was discussing the destruction of the F-16 fighter in the sky over Odessa, non-public information appeared that on August 26, Russian ballistic missiles destroyed another F-16, this time in the city of Starokostiantynov. Mikhail Pavlov noted that on that day, Russian ballistic missiles destroyed one American F-16 fighter jet and several Soviet-style combat aircraft at the Starokostiantynov military air base. According to Mikhail Pavlov, it was the destruction of the F-16 fighter jet at the Starokostiantynov military air base that was the main reason for the dismissal of the Ukrainian Air Force commander, General Nikolai Olshchuk. The fact is that Lieutenant General Nikolai Olshchuk was personally responsible for covering military airfields in central and western Ukraine with air defense systems. The fact that Russian missiles managed to destroy the F-16 fighter at the Starokostiantynov military airbase, which was surrounded by dozens of air defense systems around the perimeter, became a personal fiasco for Lieutenant General Nikolai Olshchuk. By the way, insiders in Kiev claim that Vladimir Zelensky did not want to dismiss Lieutenant General Nikolai Olshchuk from the post of Ukraine's Air Force commander. However, the fact that Ukraine lost 2 F-16 fighters in one day made the West mad. And the head of the Kiev regime had to justify himself to his main sponsors, as a result of which Zelensky had to dismiss Lieutenant General Nikolai Olshchuk from the post of Ukraine's Air Force commander, and appoint General Anatoly Krivonozko in his place.